Thanks so much for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you're a Wild Health patient, you might not know, but you have access to our referral program. This gets your friends and family 25% off Wild Health services. Just head to Clarity, and in the top right corner, you'll see Refer a Friend. Click there, and you'll be brought to a page with your referral code. Happy sharing. Hey, Nash. Thanks for coming back with us. Part 2.
Hey, Mike. It's good to be here.
So we're going to jump right in. Last time we spoke, we were, talking about coaching around behavior change and either breaking bad habits or starting up new good habits. And we started off with the bottoms up approach, really diving into sort of your why and motivations and what's really driving you. I want to pivot a little bit today into more tactics and more of what you've been referring to as the top-down approach. But before we get there, a good segue might be to chat a little bit about just how do we conceptualize failure? How do we conceptualize sort of the process of moving forward with behavior change versus the outcome of moving forward with behavior change?
Yeah, it's a great question, Mike, because this is really important in the realm of behavior change and reaching your goals. And so once you started off by getting clear on your what's your why, and what's important to you and what are the things you want to work towards, and you've kind of set out some goals. I think we can fall into a trap sometimes, and that trap is an attachment to outcome. And this can happen in a lot of different arenas and areas of our life. And this attachment to outcome can really dictate and take a hold of us of, how we're feeling, our emotional state. And so as paradoxical as this might seem, it's like, if we get to a place where we can feel whole and feel okay regardless of what happens, we actually create a sense of power. We're not letting all these external circumstances take a hold of us. So I think that's something really important to consider. Is we can work towards our goals, but work from that place of detachment, knowing that we're going to be okay regardless, and building that sense of happiness. How can we build that sense of peace and happiness within us? And I actually have a really cool quote to share on this, Mike, if you're open to around detachment. So it's a quote by Young Pueblo in a book called Inward. It's actually like a collection of little poems and snippets. And he's talking about detachment and goals. So he says, working toward our goal and simultaneously letting it go may seem paradoxical, but it is the fastest way to achieve what we want. Letting go is not giving up. It is the graceful walk between continuing to put effort into making our preferred reality come true and not allowing our happiness to be controlled by something we do not have. If we remain attached, we tend to feel agitation or even misery. This creates tension in our being that blocks us from fulfilling our desires. So I think it's just such a well-spoken, articulate way of the detachment and letting go. And it's not giving up. It's not saying, okay, I'm just going to put in the towel. It's actually, you're operating from this place of ease and lightness, which I think is really neat to think about. So just a little bit of like a mindset shift there.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, there's, I think it's such a common, unrecognized often problem of future gazing and just, when I lose 10 pounds, this is how I'm going to feel, or this is what's going to become unlocked for me, or this is the happiness that I'll achieve, or when I, quit smoking, or when, insert any habit or behavior that you're hoping to either get rid of or to take on. there is this human tendency in this sort of mind identified state to just latch on to what the outcome is going to look like, and almost kind of fast forward mentally into everything from now until then is just I wish I could just fast forward and then I would be at that location. And this is
Mhm.
I think this extends far beyond behavior change, right? I mean, how many of us have had a vacation coming up where we're not really present for the 4 or 5 days before our vacation because we're just looking forward to what it's going to be like to be wherever we're going. And you're smiling because I'm going on vacation, and this has been a topic of deep
It's like, hey, Mike.
introspection for me. um, and I'll return your quote with a quote that I like on this topic, which is from Stephen Bodian, who's an author in the sort of mindfulness and direct path space. And he says this as an exercise for people to do, which is just close your eyes, take a couple of breaths to settle yourself, and then ask yourself this: on present evidence only, without consulting the mind, is anything missing? And that's it.
Wow.
And it's
Hmm.
so powerful and so quick, and you can do that randomly over the course of the day, and it just immediately brings you back to your present experience and not to the future being just a thought arising and the past being just a memory, but what's actually happening right now, and is anything actually missing from your experience? So none of
Mhm.
that's going to help you achieve new behavior changes or new habits necessarily, but I think it's a both of those quotes inspire me to recognize that it's great to have goals. It's wonderful to want to move yourself forward in positive ways, but don't lose track of the process and don't attach your worth or your happiness to the outcome.
Mhm.
I think that's amazing advice. So I think that's a nice transition from bottoms up, maybe touching base, and then let's move on a little bit into some practical strategies, because it does also take practical strategies to affect behavior change, in a positive way. So um, I think you've got some thoughts about sort of laws of behavior change, and how people can apply them.
Mhm.
If that sounds like a good time, let's dive into that.
Yeah, let's dive into that, Mike. And I just want to say I really love that quote. I think I got the shivers. And yeah, I think it's just important to highlight, right? You can do all the tools, the tactics, the strategies. You can make all those goals. Right. At the end of the day, is that sense of satisfaction within, that sense of wholeness within, that we're looking to achieve. So just keep that in mind as we move forward, and also just dive into the actual tactics here. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this, whether you're building new habits, breaking old ones. I've really liked the laws of behavior change that James Clear has like really categorized and made it really simple to understand. So I'm all for simplicity here. And then there's just different ways to look at it. So the 4 laws of behavior change from Atomic Habits are: make it obvious, number 2, make it attractive, number 3, make it easy, and then number 4, make it satisfying. So let's start with the beginning. So number 1 is just getting really clear on, number 1, what the goals are, what you're trying to do. And what helps to make it obvious is actually stating it, whether it's writing it down or stating it to other people, because you're putting it out there. This is the intention that you're creating. So that's one way to make it obvious and make it apparent. And if you like to physically write down your goals, if you make that statement to someone else, that's going to be really helpful, because you're creating that forward momentum in action. And that's going to also help improve the awareness and the thinking of that goal. Um, Another way to make it obvious is designing your environment in such a way that makes it clearly visible. So let's say I have a goal to meditate more. Um, okay, I'm going to put my meditation cushion um, right in a place where I can see it when I wake up in the morning, because I want to meditate more often in the morning. Okay, I see it there. So that's one way. Habit stacking, I think, is another way of making it obvious. It's also a way of making it easy too. But if there's certain activities that you're going to be doing throughout the day, you're going to go to the bathroom in the morning, or you're going to brush your teeth, stacking whatever behavior you want to do on top of that. So, okay, after I brush my teeth, okay, I'm going to go sit on my meditation cushion, right? So those are all some ideas around making it obvious. But I think it really starts with creating that intention, writing it down. How can you make it more apparent throughout your day to day? Whether you're seeing that somewhere, you have your vision board, you have your notepad. Um, so those are some ideas there. Mike, any other thoughts on that first law before we
Yeah, I mean, I think just
shift?
getting practical examples of how you actually do this is always really useful. I've always found it really useful. So maybe 2 years ago, I think this must have been sort of like still when people were mostly home with the pandemic. My boys and I decided that we wanted to get really good at doing pull-ups. And there's a pull-up bar as part of the exercise equipment and squat rack in the garage gym here, but Portland's rainy, and you don't always want to go out to the garage if you're 12 or I guess 10 years old at the time. So I bought like a $20 doorway pull-up bar from Amazon and installed it in what was then the office in our house, and it's really centrally located, like right off of the kitchen, so you couldn't really walk through the kitchen without glancing and seeing the pull-up bar. So like it's obvious, it's always there as a reminder. We printed out a list of how many you're supposed to do each day, and everybody had to kind of mark off whether or not they'd done it. So there's it was just the boys and I. We had accountability, right? We stated
Yeah,
our goals. We each wanted to add X number of pull-ups to our maximum pull-ups at the end of 30 days. So like this smart goal with a time and an actual outcome. It was obviously located, and anytime you walked through and saw the bar, you had to go over and do some pull-ups. And I gotta say, like all three of us were just all in because it was so obvious and so right there. And part of easy,
yeah,
it was easy. It was just
yeah,
like part
yeah.
folded in. You didn't have to make an effort to go out to the gym. You didn't have to do anything that was harder. So um, yeah, that totally resonates with me. I think if you're able to make something obvious and easy, you're already a significant part of the way there in terms of really turning that into a habit.
Yeah. Those doorway pull-up bars make it much easier, right? Yeah, so that's a great example there. Um, so, and then you also just mentioned another point that I think is really helpful, that it really ties into all these laws, like having that sense of accountability is really important. And in a way, this ties into the next law of making it attractive, because for a lot of people, that's their friends or someone close to them. They're having that partner that's going to hold them accountable. And um, if you can think of the ways, like how can you not only make it easy, but in terms of making this seem like, okay, I want to do this. If you are scheduling something with a buddy, or you're doing it with someone else, or you have a group to do it with, so that's going to make the whole thing more enjoyable, more attractive. So like we talked about in last podcast, if you haven't listened, but it's like, think about all the things that really excite you. um, if you have if you have the opportunity to do this new habit with a group of people, or have a buddy that you can do it with, it's just going to make it more enjoyable along the way. You can surround yourself in groups, or find groups of people that are doing common things that are making it more enjoyable, more attractive for you. um, so just some thoughts there. I thought that was a good segue. Some other ideas for making it attractive. There's this idea of or concept of temptation bundling. So you're bundling one thing that you want to do with something that you already enjoy doing. Okay. So you're pairing action that you want to do with an action that you need to do. Okay. Um, so there's, I think, a lot of different ways to think about this. So if you know, okay, you have this goal of, okay, you want to read more, that's a goal that you want to do. So and there's like a certain topic that you really want to read, and then there's like something that you like need to do for work. So it's like you pair those two together. Okay, like I'm gonna, read this novel here, but before I do that, I'm gonna like read the stuff that I need to do for work right before it. So pairing two things together. There's Mike, you can probably think of some better examples.
I've got
Um,
a great one. I need to
yeah,
be better about walking my dog regularly. She needs the exercise, but she's so low maintenance, and she's 9 years old. She's not really like she's never been a restless dog. She's like happy to sit around most of the time. She's pretty healthy,
yeah,
but um, it's good for her to walk and to be outside. I love going out and walking in the woods. And there's, I'm really fortunate out here in Portland. There's forest in the city. So it's, 10 minutes away. I can be walking in the woods with nobody around. Um,
hmm
and about, 4 or 5 years ago, it dawned on me, I should just take the dog with me instead of going off into
yeah,
and doing this thing I enjoy. And it turns out that not only is it way more fun with the dog there, but it is like clearly her happy place. Like we found a place where she's off leash. She's running in the woods, chasing after squirrel and deer and whatever else that she's trying to catch, and is clearly like a wonderful addition to just her vitality and health. But for me, it's something I was doing anyway. And being able to just, what's the downside? I got to wipe her paws off when we get out because it's often muddy. Like that was a pretty easy
hmm
thing to deal with. But yeah, I love that. I love taking something that you're already doing or that you already want to do more of, and seeing how you can roll something that you need to do into that. One other example, when I was in academics and giving lectures, I wanted to give lectures because it was an opportunity to engage with the medical community. I made a lot of great connections that way, but I also needed to build up a library of teaching materials so I didn't have to give the same talks over and over again. And I just at one point started like screen and audio recording every time that I would give a talk. And I found that, 6 months later, I had this library of educational materials. I didn't have to sit down and do them separately. They were all recorded in the midst of doing something that I wanted to do anyway. And I think
hmm
habit stacking like that is just a really underutilized and powerful tool.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think, just to summarize, like just think about how can you make this whole process enjoyable. Sometimes I've been guilty of, falling into the belief that, okay, changes needs to be a struggle, right? And we're not saying that change can be hard. Change can be hard. It can be uncomfortable, but the whole thing doesn't need to be a struggle. What if it was just also fun too, right? And think of all the ways that you can make change as fun as possible. Think about what are the things that you enjoy doing. Like um, I love being outside, right? So I instead of just running on pavement, I was like, I'm going to go for trail runs, right? Because I love being on trails. I love being in nature. I used to work as a personal trainer for many years, and people would come to me and be like, what's the best exercise? Like, what should I be doing? And I would never give one answer. I would always ask my client, what like what is the exercise that you will do that you enjoy doing? So I think the best exercise is the one that you will actually do. I mean, I'm saying that kind of cheek and tongue, but it's the thing that you'll actually do and that you enjoy doing, and so that's going to be sustainable, right? So again, just come back to like what makes you happy. Maybe you just want to go, play a game with some friends. So how do you, incorporate, some exercise and movement into that, if that's what's going to fuel you and make you happy along the way. So I think it's just good to think in different ways of how can this process be actually fun, especially if you're working on something that might feel daunting or challenging.
Yeah, I think this is something that I often say that part of the secret sauce of the outcomes that we see with the folks we work with is exactly this. It is not only health coaching, but it's coaching behavior change because
Yeah.
you know people go to their primary care physician and let's say they're overweight and they've got some pre-diabetes. Generally what they hear is eat less and move more. And
Mm-hmm.
you know okay, I mean that may or may not be, I mean moving more if you're sedentary, probably good advice. Eating less, who knows, maybe they just need to be eating differently. But
Mm-hmm.
there's no tools to actually implement that. And
Yeah.
when you're working with someone who can really take a dive into what you're doing now, what motivates you, what you enjoy, and come up with a strategy that allows you to do things that are positive influences on your health that are also going to be really fun. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's where the magic happens, right? Because you
Yeah.
can't, I don't care how strong your willpower is, you can't just turn around and force yourself to do something you really dislike
Yeah.
for an extended period of time. And this is where we see, you know, New Year's resolutions fall off the rails. This is where we see people on, sort of dieting strategies fall off the rails. It's got to be something that feels fun. And that's the work. That's where, folks like you really work magic is, hey, let's figure out something that's going to help you get closer towards this behavior you're trying to incorporate or further away from this behavior you're trying to cut down on. But let's do it in a way that doesn't feel like work, that feels like something fun.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the creative process comes in. That's where working with a coach can be really helpful, and and then figuring out unique creative ways to make it fun for you, and maybe that's creating new rituals in your life, and doing some investigation on what could you really enjoy doing and incorporating into your life, to give you something to look forward to. Um, okay, so let's transition on to the next one. Make it easy, and we've touched upon a few things already here. I'll start with saying the 2 minute rule that James Clear talks about, and I think it's really important to consider that you don't need to start big. In fact, like let's start as small as possible when it comes to making a new change, especially if it's something that's new and you've never done before. So instead of making that goal to go run for half an hour, 5 days a week, like let's start by tying your shoes and getting dressed in your running clothes and then going for a run for 2 minutes, and you realize you create those like small tiny steps and create that small tiny action that leads to more action and further progress. So you know be smart about how you're setting your goals, and oftentimes it's like, how can we work smarter, not harder, right? So making these small actionable steps that you can do. So you don't need to do a 45-minute or a 60-minute workout. Like start with 5 minutes, a little bit of movement, and then go from there, and start with 1 minute, make it simple. And you realize like that's going to help build confidence too, which is really, really important for sustainable change, right? You build that confidence, you prove it to yourself that you can do it, right? um, I know this happens a lot with some people are trying to introduce some cold exposure into their life, whether through cold showers. Like start with 10 seconds of cold and then turn it to hot, right? And then you build that capacity over time. Just we adapt. We're so amazing at adapting, right? So that's the 2 minute rule. Start small, okay, and then you'll be able to build upon that. Another thing for making it easy, how can we reduce the amount of friction between us and whatever goal there is? So let's say we want to work out more, and maybe your gym is 20 30 minutes away. Well, maybe instead of doing a gym workout that's 20 30 minutes away, what options do you have to work out from home? right? Or if you know there's a specific thing that you want to do, how can you put yourself closer to that thing? So like, how do you put yourself closer to that pull-up bar? So you got the pull-up bar, put it in a space, you made it easier, reduce the friction. So how can you kind of creatively organize your day? Or maybe you have to go to a certain place to do something. It's like, how can you tie that in with other things that you have to do? Maybe you find a gym that's on your way to work. How can you reduce the number of steps between you and doing that goal or achieving that goal? Um, so reducing the friction in all ways. Another way to make it easy is having some constant reminders, right? And so personally for me, it's like if I put something on my calendar, on my schedule, or set an alarm on my phone, like if I'm getting that reminder, again, it's making it more obvious, but also it's like okay, time to breathe. Let's take a 5 minute breath work break right now, right? So, and that's where you can use technology. How could we use technology and resources that are available to us to make it easier, right? So those are some thoughts. So, and then and I think this really ties into, again, like I mentioned earlier, priming your environment for successful change, right? So, well, okay, I'm really trying to minimize the amount of time I spend on social media and Instagram. So this was something that I did. This is maybe a few years ago, where I was struggling a lot with social media on my phone. So one thing I did was I just deleted the app from my phone. I was like, okay, like I'll try this for a little bit. And yes, it's maybe not the long-term solution, but I did that. But that's maybe a little bit extreme. One thing I did before that was I put the phone in another room so that when I woke up in the morning, it wasn't the first thing that I went to. And so now I have that kind of routine so well established. Is like, for me, there's at least an hour gap between when I wake up and when I'm checking my phone, roughly. So I'm before I check my phone, I've done my meditation. I've gone to the bathroom. I've had some water. I've maybe done my movement, or I've gone for a run, and then I check my phone. And so now, that because I've practiced it so much now, it's ingrained in me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Mike Mallon and I did a whole podcast on the dangers of phones and social media,
Okay.
and I think I've gone down a similar route in at multiple points, but whether it's deleting the app off the phone, or like my home screen on my phone, it has no apps on it other than phone and text and calendar. Everything else is off in another folder, so I have to actually like search for an app if I
Gotcha.
want it. All of my notifications are
Yeah.
off and my phone's in black and white. It's like the most boring thing that I don't want to pick up anymore, and that's all making it easy, right? It's not a willpower thing
Yeah.
of, oh, I don't want to pick my phone up. It's like I'm no longer interested in picking my phone up. So
Yeah.
those are all amazing tips. I think that removing the activation energy with sort of proximity and ease is a great tip. And I mean, from the pull-up bar was more of like hey, we're going to do this thing for 4 or 6 weeks and see how good we can get at pull-ups. But the reality is,
Yeah.
where I go work out outside of the house has to be within 5 minutes of my house. And then most of the
Hmm.
time I'm in my garage, because otherwise I'm going to
Yeah.
find some other thing that I need to get done. So I think placing things right there where they're visible, they're easy, they're accessible is a fantastic piece of advice. Um, is there a fourth law? Did we get through three of them? Did
Yes.
we miss one?
We did three. Yeah, and then the fourth one, make it satisfying. And I think this is where you can use a little bit of creativity and figure out how you can make it more satisfying. But one is, you want to reward yourself for doing what you intended to do, and that's where you can creatively think about, like, how would you like to reward yourself if you did something. Maybe it's going out and having some food that you really enjoy. It could even just be as simple as using a habit tracker and literally marking the thing that you did, and to create that sense of satisfaction, right? Again, um, we talked about earlier, we want to create that sense of peace and joy from within first. But um, again, how can you make it satisfying? It's rewarding yourself for doing the thing that you did, using a habit tracker. Even on the reverse is, how can you also make doing nothing enjoyable when you're trying to avoid bad habits? So in a sense of, you're creating that sense of satisfaction within from doing nothing, and creating that sense of stability within. And then when you're replacing those with good habits, it's going to be only even more enjoyable and more satisfying, and giving you that natural dopamine rush. So yeah, just some thoughts there. It's so the more that you're able to, um, again, follow all these rules that we talked about, and then get to a place of like you find that enjoyment with it. This goes very much hand in hand with the second rule of making it attractive and enjoyable. But um, if you want to have like a dance party after you've gone ahead and accomplished that thing. So sometimes when working with clients, we're like, okay, how are you going to celebrate achieving this goal? Right? Maybe that's going to have a dance party. Maybe that's going out with friends, whatever it is. But take a pause and actually congratulate yourself for doing that thing. So I think is really important, should not be forgotten.
Yeah, I love that, and I love celebrating just doing the thing, not necessarily getting to what the end outcome
Yeah.
is, right? So you can celebrate
Yes.
having, if your goal
Yeah.
was to meditate regularly, and you did a 2 minute meditation today, way to go, right? You can celebrate the process.
Yeah.
Maybe that's not. Maybe your goal is to meditate regularly for half an hour a day, and you got 2 minutes in
Right.
because you just started. Great, you did it, right? I mean, it's you can
Yeah.
celebrate all the milestones along the way, and not just wait until you get there to feel like you've accomplished something you're accomplishing right now. So I think it's such a positive way of looking
Yeah.
at it. um I know, so we're coming up, I think we're just over half an hour. I want to wind us down, but before I do, and not to make it into more of a Debbie Downer kind of situation, because we've been so positive today, I think we can keep it positive.
Mhm.
But let's pivot for a quick moment to um, unsatisfied, or I don't know, bad is so judgmental, but non-desirable habits, right? The habits that we want to
Mhm.
break. I feel like we've spent a lot of time
Yeah.
talking about habits we want to build. How do you make a
Yeah.
habit unattractive or hard or otherwise unappealing if you're looking to take something and remove it from what has become a regular behavior or habit?
Yeah. Like in a way you can, take everything that we talked about it and look at the inverse. If there's, you know, certain things that we're looking to avoid, from a more strategic standpoint, like let's put that out of sight. Whether it's certain foods that we're trying to avoid, or substances, whatever it might be. How can we, put in a sense, put it in our physical folder or digital folder, and make it harder for us to get to, in a sense. And so that's where, like, we can, how can we design our environment to, reduce the amount of times where we're going to our bad habits, and increase the amount of times that we're going to those habits that we want to do. So, like, look around your house, see what's there. Like, how can you prime your environment to make it harder to get the food that maybe you want to eat less of, right? So I think that's one thing. And I think I also want to bring up, kind of this approach of, when we're going through change, and when we're trying to reduce the amount of quote unquote bad habits, right? There's going to be some difficult sensation, right? Some that it's dealing with a craving, right? So part of it is, how can we deal with a craving when that sensation is so strong, right? And there's almost that kind of like addiction kind of sensation there. So one is, the more that we can train ourselves to be with a sensation and to breathe through that sensation, we'll actually build our capacity to handle a lot more, and to make that craving less and less desirable. Oftentimes, when we have a craving for something, there's an underlying emotion and an underlying need. So, maybe we have a kind of a craving addiction with, sugar, just to give an example. Um, and maybe, that craving is like, oh, we've actually already eaten enough food, but there's this sort of sugar addiction or craving that we're feeling. There's usually an underlying need there. So how can we actually pause for a moment, take a few deep breaths, really just check in with our body, label the feeling, label the sensation, and then do some investigation there and say, what's underneath that? Okay, maybe I'm seeking some comfort right now. Maybe I'm seeking some connection right now. Or I'm feeling stressed because of X, Y, or Z. Maybe there's a conversation that I'm avoiding right now, and that's causing this tension in me that's making me reach for this sugar. So, in other words, if we start to actually do this process of, being with ourselves, being present with ourselves, actually just get comfortable doing nothing. That's why I think having some sort of breath work or meditative practice, some sort of awareness practice, it could be going for solo walks, where you're connecting with yourself, getting in touch with what your needs are, what your sensations are. That's going to really set you up for success. And it'll be a surprise, like how much you can improve. And by just being with that sensation and not going for that immediate craving, and just asking yourself, what is it that I'm really needing and craving right now? So a little bit of a top down and bottoms up approach to dealing with kind of unwanted habits.
I love that. All right. Well, I'm pretty confident this is going to stir up some more questions that are going to make me lure you back to the podcast for another talk. But this has been outstanding, and really, so grateful for you and your perspective on these things. We'll resume after the vacation. We'll find some time and get back together. But thanks again, Nosh.
That's good. Yeah, great to be here. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Health Podcast. If you found it helpful, give us a 5-star rating and write a review on iTunes. It really helps the podcast, and we greatly appreciate it. If you want to be a client or you want to work with us, go to wildhealth.com. Thanks again.